But this is their biggest problem to date. The fucking wild card rule, everybody. Again, as I mentioned, started out as 3, now turned to 4 by the end of Raw this week when Lars Sullivan showed up out of nowhere and Vince McMahon caved in his own rule and changed it from 3 to 4. So even he doesn't know the consistency of his own rules. Allows 3 or 4 people from any given brand, or it's specifically Raw and SmackDown. Let's not kid ourselves and assume NXT would be involved in this, or 205 Live or NXT UK, which would make way too much sense because they only really care about the top stars here. It would allow them to go to the other show for one night. And for what purpose? I don't know. I really don't. And I'll talk about the nitty-gritty of Raw and SmackDown from this past week. But when we get matches that serve no purpose, like Roman Reigns and Drew McIntyre, yes, they did have a better match this week on Raw than they did at WrestleMania, which fucking sucked. And I wanted to give it I wanted to give it a chance and hope that it would be good, in hopes that it would be a great match and it'd be hard-hitting and physical. Farthest thing from it, it was a dud of a match. McIntyre lost clean. It sucked, and I was not a fan of that. The match this week was a bit better, but what exactly, by doing a rematch between these two, what was the purpose? What exactly was it going to accomplish? Yeah, Roman Reigns got another win over Drew McIntyre. Whoop-de-fucking-do. It accomplished nothing. And I guess it got Roman Reigns on Raw for 1 week because he wasn't on SmackDown because I guess he was away for the European tour this past week. I guess they left on Monday night, early Tuesday, whatever. But aside from that, though, if this wasn't a 1 week thing, going forward, giving us random matches, yeah, which are good in the moment, it gives us some good matches like Kofi and AJ and Sami Zayn, which was probably, not even probably, it was the best match between Raw and SmackDown this week. Other than that, what exactly does it do? Because you knew Kofi wasn't going to lose the championship, so why fucking bother? Having a Kofi Kingston-Daniel Bryan main event on Raw feels so ass backwards to me. After seeing that match, why would I have any incentive to watch SmackDown? Why? I just saw the WWE title defended on Raw. And yeah, they added another WWE Championship match to SmackDown. But at the same time, it was a match that was great, but with a very obvious outcome. And they didn't advertise it in advance either. It wasn't like it was hyped up over the course of a week or two, or even a fucking day. They announced the match the night of the show. So, again, you don't really get viewers in the middle of a show. I would assume, and again, I'm no TV ratings expert here, but I don't think on a 2-hour show like SmackDown, if they announce a WWE title match at the start of the show, I don't think the ratings will increase going into the second hour, because how are people supposed to know that they've announced the WWE title match? And yeah, they could announce it on social media, on their website. By that point, it's too little too late. By the start of the show, most people have already made up their minds whether they want to watch SmackDown or not, because of anything they've hyped up prior to that point. And the WWE title match was not made official until the start of the show. So that made no sense. And again, we're going to talk all about this in the specifics of my Raw and SmackDown reviews. But when it comes to this fucking wild card rule, I just don't see how this is supposed to help the very obvious problem they're dealing with right now in the ratings. The ratings are terrible, and we can argue all day long how valuable are the ratings. They mean nothing. They're outdated. They're passé. They're this. They're that. I completely understand all the criticism because I've heard it a million times before. I've been one of those people before. The ratings may not be the most accurate in 2019. Not everyone watches shit on cable and through TV. Some people watch it through streaming sites and YouTube and social media, blah, 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 blah. But the issue is that social media, these streaming sites, and everything else have been around now for 5 to 10 years. And the ratings were better 5 to 10 years ago. The product may not have been that much better, but the ratings were. So it's very clear that with the creative not improving and there not being any stars for people to tune in to see, people are starting to drift away. They're starting to leave. Their core audience that they knew that they had years ago, that they could always rely on to tune into Raw through thick and thin, is starting to erode away. They don't have that core audience anymore. They still do in the form of like 1 million or 2 people, 1 or 2 million people, but that's not enough. This was a show that would consistently do at least 3 million people, which is nothing compared to the Attitude Era numbers, which would be like fucking 9 million. I understand that. But by modern, numbers, that wasn't too terrible. At least they always had that solid 3 million base. They don't even have that anymore. Both Raw and SmackDown, the ratings are down. Not only are they just down from last year, they're down like 25%. That's a fucking alarming number. That is really, really bad. And with the creative being worse than it's ever been, you would have to assume, a better creative will increase better ratings. But as I just got done talking about on hashtag Ask You Some on Wednesday, I feel like the damage is done. Even if Triple H was to take over tomorrow, let's say Vince wakes up tomorrow, realizes how bad his product has been, gets off whatever the fuck he's smoking, and realizes, listen, my product sucks. I need to pass this on to someone who knows what they're doing, like a Triple H, based off his work in NXT, NXT UK, 205 Live, which are infinitely better now than they were prior to Triple H coming in and taking the reins of those respective brands. Even if Triple H was to take full creative control of Raw tomorrow, would it change anything? Honestly, I would argue we won't know unless it happens, until it happens, which is only inevitable. I just don't think it happens anytime soon. Vince will be around till the day he dies. He will be booking Raw from his fucking deathbed if that's what needs to happen in order for him to be in control of his own show. But even if Triple H took control tomorrow, I feel like the damage is done. I feel like that core audience is not going to come back knowing that the product is better. It's the same way that when WCW was bought out, those fans did not tune into WWE. They just went away and never came back because they saw WWE creatively as the inferior product. So why would they fucking cave in and watch the opponent that they so long wanted to see fail and ultimately succeeded and took out their favorite wrestling company? A lot of people just did not come back. And WWE tried so fucking hard over the last 20 years to get those fans back that left when the Attitude Era died. After WCW was bought out, those fans never came back. But they tried really, really hard to get them back. By bringing in Sting, by bringing back Goldberg, by bringing back Hulk Hogan a million times, by doing this, by doing that. And you would think that they're almost copying the WCW formula by making their Monday night show so fucking bad, but they're almost copying WCW in all the wrong ways. This show is as bad as it has been in a long time. And again, that's saying something, because Raw has been bad over the years. But you would think it's like a month or two. And I can tell you, watching consistently, not having missed an episode of Raw in close to 11 years, since I started watching back in 2008, we've all seen the bad, we've all seen the ugly. This is pretty ugly. When you sit through a 3-hour show, and there are very few redeemable qualities about this show, both from an in-ring standpoint, promo standpoint, character standpoint, what have you. That's bad. On a 3-hour show, and now it's starting to bleed into SmackDown. At least 3 years ago when the brand split first started, Raw kind of sort of sucked because they were relying on the same matches every single week with Kevin Owens, Roman Reigns, Chris Jericho, and Seth Rollins, but SmackDown was killing it. They had a very limited roster, and they were making the most of everyone they had. Since then, they've likely doubled their roster numbers by calling up people from NXT they have no idea what to do with, not letting people go. And it seems the only time people are not released, but leave this company, leave WWE, is at their own volition. Is if they want to leave. Is if they ask for their release. Unless you get fucking accused of rape or involved in a backstage incident, it seems they are willing to hold on to anyone. Not that they really care about where they go in the case of like a Ty Dillinger or a Tyler Breeze. Ty Dillinger was let go because he wanted to be let go. They weren't going to let the guy go. Not because they didn't see him as a threat in AEW or another promotion, just because why bother letting him go when we have all the money in the world? It's not a cost-cutting measure anymore. It used to be the budget cuts. 10 years ago, we would get like the Black Friday cuts. I remember they had one back in like 2014. They cut like fucking 11 people. And that was right, coincidentally enough, right after the network launched, and they were cutting back on costs. This company is making more money hand over fist than they have ever done at any other point in their existence. Yet the creative is as bad as it is because Vince fails to see the future. He fails to adapt with the times and make new stars. That's their biggest problem right now, is making new stars. They're way too focused and way too busy bringing in people from the past. I mean, Triple H has always really been on TV, but not from an in-ring standpoint. He hasn't wrestled, but he'll always have a match at WrestleMania. John Cena will always be around in some form or fashion. And he's part of that old guard now. Cena has not been consistently on WWE TV in years. It's been at least 4 or 5 years since Cena was an integral factor in the WWE programming. He's just not anymore, and for good reason, because there's really not much more for him to do, and they have to move on. But the issue is that with Cena being gone, there's no one for fans to look forward to see. And I hate saying that because people like me love Seth Rollins and AJ Styles, but I'm talking about the bigger picture here, the casual audience that WWE so desperately wants to win over. I understand why, but they also have to focus on their core audience that pays their good money for their network and their shows and go to the events. Those are the people that are still paying good money to go to the shows. At least what's left of that core audience, because WWE has been ignoring its audience, has been ignoring that core audience for so long now. Those people, at least some of them, are starting to leave. They're not buying tickets to the shows anymore. They're not watching Raw. They're not watching SmackDown. They're not subscribed to the network anymore because they gave up. If WWE doesn't care about you and me, then why the fuck should we care? And that's a very valid reason to not want to watch this show anymore, to not want to watch Raw. Because if they don't want to do what you and I want to see happen, which you can't do all the time, obviously, it's a very cliche phrase at this point, but what's best for business may not always be what we want to see. But some of these things that we watch on Raw, it's not that it's just dull or it doesn't interest me. Like, that's all, whatever. If I don't like fucking this guy or that guy getting a push, that's purely my opinion. I'm not the biggest Roman Reigns fan in the world. I like Roman Reigns. I'm not his biggest supporter. But the fact that he's doing this instead of that, that's merely nitpicking. But it seems like they go out of their way sometimes to do the exact opposite of what fans want to see. Not only do they not listen to us, they do the exact opposite of what we want to see on their weekly television shows.